If you're looking to buy your very first real estate, it doesn't matter if it's personal home or rental properties, you're not just looking at the mortgage payments and property tax and all that stuff. Those are just the basic stuff that you need to pay attention to. But more importantly, you need to actually do a full financial assessment. And this is why we brought on Ryan Ordonez. He's a financial planner, he's a mortgage broker, he's also a real estate agent that's helping his community clients to purchase their first home with a full confidence. He will break down the number in a way that will really allow you to see the full financial situation and will not actually put yourself in a bad financial spot. So if you want to know exactly how he does it, let's dive into this podcast. Okay, Ryan, so you're a realtor, you're a mortgage broker, you do a lot of things for your clients and help people understand exactly what you do for like in Toronto area.
Actually, you missed out one thing. I'm also a licensed insurance broker. Yeah, so I kind of really help them from start to finish, right? From getting them pre-approved, getting their finances straightened up, searching their home. And once we get that home search done, I help them, protect that investment that they just purchased.
Okay, so someone that's a young family, for example, people who are, let's say, around 30 years old, young family approaching you, what would your advice be? Because it sounds like you're doing a lot of like financial planning for them, including the insurance, the mortgage, and then buying their first home and all that stuff. What would be the very first step that you would kind of advise them?
So I always wanted to have that first conversation with a potential client. I tell them to sit down with me for an hour or so. I actually do a first time home buyer seminar where I cover the entire process of buying a home. So regardless if they go with me as a realtor or not, I mean, they are going to be well prepared, not be taken advantage of if they go somewhere else. But I think the first time home buyer will answer a lot of questions that they might have in terms of the entire process of buying a home. I may not remove the entire stress, but at least I can kind of eliminate how do I say this, emotionally lessen it a bit.
Got it. Okay. By the way, since I already know you, and I know you're a business model, but for people who actually don't really know what you mean by, being taken advantage, because that's one thing I always find that you do very, very well for your clients. Let's give a couple different examples on what people need to be aware of during this initial process.
Right now, I actually just the other day somebody approached me. This is a perfect example. So they purchased a home. This is through a common friend. So they just referred it to me. So the person right now is in a financial struggle. So when they purchased their home, this mortgage guy did a charge a 1% broker or lender fee, I believe, to kind of fix some of their numbers to get them approved. Right. So obviously we are in a strange market right now. The home wasn't really appraised as much. So the entire exit strategy that they have isn't going to work. So now rates went up. Obviously, the mortgage payments went up and all the costs that involves in a household obviously went up, right? Their incomes did not go as high as what their payments are. So now they are in a financial bind, right? So my job is that conversation is, to get them started. Owning a home is you have to be really be strategic with what you have. Look at your finances. Some of us are afraid of looking at the finances, right? Just paying a bill, paying a credit card. Sometimes when I pull up a credit, clients don't even know, oh, they owe that much to a certain credit card, right? But me having that first time home buyer seminar kind of open up their eyes to a lot of the small things that they don't want to really see.
Yeah, so basically, instead of like just assessing whether or not what you can qualify for a mortgage and just acquiring the property, you look at all the other financial obligation that they currently have, just so that you can get a sense of I guess, an idea on where their comfort level is, right? One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of younger people is that when they get into their very first home, they're getting very exciting and all that stuff, right? But they end up over leverage themselves.
Yes, yes.
And then they end up only working for the house and there's no savings set aside. So that's the very first thing you do. During that meeting, you kind of understand exactly what your credit report
Yes.
looks like, financial obligation. What else do you ask them in that initial discussion?
So, they have obviously a lot of questions. First thing first, just to get them pre-approval. Again, know their finances, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you don't want them owning a home and then just use the home just to sleep on every night. But then they ended up getting a second job just because they cannot afford all the expenses that comes with owning a home, right? And again, first-time home buyers, they do have a lot of questions. They're very stressed out. Not we haven't even started. They're already stressed out with a lot of things, the costs involved, the closing fees, and all this, the first-time home buyers benefits that they have. All these questions are answered in my first-time home buyer seminar.
I gotta ask you a question. In today's market, sometimes there's so many different inventories out there, right? And then people started like searching many different options. It is probably the first time, in the past like 5 years that buyers actually have the choice,
Yes.
to pick what they actually love. For someone younger family, when they're looking at something that they were like, okay, I really, really love, let's say the skylight of this property, the sunrooms and all that stuff, but it's a little bit over their budget. How do you correct that expectation? How do you balance between, their dream house versus like what they can truly afford?
That's a good question, actually. So a lot of us buy, and just been doing this for 10 years now. A lot of my clients really, even me personally, sometimes we buy using our emotions, not really thinking over things, right? But for me, I start with the data. What I mean by that is, I do a first comparative market analysis, or we call it CMA, right? So we buy with numbers. We look at the actual numbers. We don't buy with emotions, because if I show them the numbers, right, the reality check, right, it kicks in sometimes, where, yeah, I like the skylight, oh, I like the kitchen, I can entertain a lot of friends here, but it's over my budget. Well, you know what, your friends are going to be there on the weekend, but you'll be working 6 or 7 times a week. Maybe you want to have time to entertain them, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
So, I try to show them the data. Again, what's out there. I know you have buyers right now in today's market have the upper hand, don't get me wrong, but if they know the data that they're working on, they put a limit on a certain home, so at least they eliminate the emotions that both goes with it, right? And that way, they'll be smart buyers at the end of it all.
Yeah, because one of the things that I also notice a lot of people, basically even in my generation, they don't have their life insurance set up, right? They focus so much on just having that mortgage for their first home, and they literally had no saving afterwards. And yeah, you're 100% right. With all the inflation, people tend now is looking to second jobs and all that stuff, and just for the purpose of entertaining their friends, potential like entertainment for their friends like over the
Yeah.
weekends and all that stuff. So it just feels like when the emotion really kicks in, it really can create a huge impact for the next 5 to 10 years on their financial planning. So with that kind of situation, are you currently having a lot of honest conversation like this with your clients, or you find that people are a little bit more conservative in today's market?
Actually, a lot of my clients right now, they're still scared, just because of they don't know where we're heading. If you ask me, like, yeah, it's a buyer's market, but really, what does that mean? Or where does the interest heads, right? We have an announcement coming in a couple of days, but we don't have a crystal ball to answer that. Really, the best bet really is to look at our own finances, follow the data, and just work within what you have. So that way you can control what you have and not worry about anything else, the outside noise, right? So if we kind of know what we have, what we're working on, really it's much easier to navigate, and we eliminate the guessing game.
Got it. Okay. So walk us through a little bit more deep with what you just described. Because obviously we need to be fully aware, but what does that truly mean? If you can give us a bit of an idea on how that process actually look like. Yeah, like that maybe using your most recent examples, how you guide people through this entire process, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
how do you actually make that informed decision in today's market?
Okay, so I'm working with a couple of clients right now, just to give an example. So whenever I send them listing, on top of the MLS listing that I sent, I put the actual, numbers that they're looking at in terms of spending every month. It might not be the exact one, but it's as close as possible to their spending, right? So I'll put them, okay, this is the purchase price, this is the down payment that you need, this is including the maintenance fee, this is including the property tax every month, right? So you're over at 3,500 right now. And then we have to think about utilities, cable, right? And obviously you have other expenses. You mentioned to me you have a car loan, for example, so you have to incorporate those expenses. You have cell phone bills as well, right? So those are the things that I do the extra mile. After the transaction, me, the agent, I walk away from that deal. I get paid. I mean, but they're the ones who will be working on this expenses for what, 25, 30 years, right? I want to make sure that I do a good job on presenting them the numbers, the actual numbers, not actual, but close enough numbers. So that way, they are more educated, they're more prepared into getting in, because owning a home, honestly, it's a great feeling, but it's a much better feeling if you enter the market knowing that you can actually afford it, live comfortably. The last thing I want is for you that you cannot even afford to go to Niagara Falls for an overnight stay, right? Just
Right.
because you burned out working out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, you end up being in that rat race, basically. You
Yeah, yeah,
working, 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 and then there's no other options for you to stop.
exactly.
Yeah, awesome. And by the way, this is one part I really like about your approach because it's a very honest approach. Because like a lot of agents out there, when buyers are like kind of emotionally attached to home, they push it through as far as they can, get them qualified. In some cases, even B lender, now with A lenders.
Yeah,
Right? So now your interest rate is even higher. You get them to buy, and the goal here for them, their best interest is to just it's not with the clients, it's with themselves by
yeah.
making that commission. But with you, you literally break through everything. Even if you had to kind of offend people a little bit, like you're totally okay doing that because you know that you're doing the right thing, for the
You know,
families in the long run.
in all honesty, I've been burned before, and you know this. You know what? I may not say the things that you wanted to say to my clients, but I make sure that I tell you what you need to know,
Mhm.
right? In the process, right? I may offend you in the way that I speak, and I wanted to apologize, but also not apologize, because at the end of the day, it is for you. What I'm trying to say is for you in the long run. not just to get you in that home, right? I mean, obviously that's the goal, but we want to make sure we do it the right way.
For sure, for sure. That's awesome. Okay, so that leads to the next question because a lot of the newer, like the first-time home buyers, sometimes now they're also might be looking at house hacking. Maybe rent out a couple rooms in their home, or maybe like find a in-law suite or legal duplex where they can kind of get a tenants in the, let's say, the lower level or upper level so that they can share a bit of financial responsibility. If someone has that kind of idea like that, do you incorporate that kind of investment strategy with the first-time home purchase? Or like how
Oh,
do you balance between these two?
for sure. That's actually a great idea, especially for first-time home buyers to kind of help them with the expenses that comes with it. But I also tell them, you know what, the pros and cons, right? You're living with somebody, right? The noise, the possibility of your tenant not paying, right? The repairs that comes along with it, right? Those are the things that, yeah, it's great to have somebody paying $2,000 a month, but it comes with small, I don't want to say headaches, but small inconveniences on your part, right, as a homeowner, right? But you got to make sure that if a first time home buyer is willing to do that, they are comfortable with the pros and cons that comes along with it.
For sure, for sure. Okay. So it's all about comfort level. Like really understand the clients and then try to like to see if paying for something that is a little bit more premium, maybe a little bit bigger, but you gotta also understand like what's required to kind of maintain that property and the mortgage payments and all that.
That's true.
Got it. Okay. So that's very interesting. And obviously like everybody's a little bit different. So depending on the conversation, you will advise differently according to their situation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the buying process then, because let's say like a client has actually confirmed, okay, this is the criteria, we're comfortable, with the, let's say, maybe not having to like share the place with other people. It's within the budget. You guys start going into that house hunting phase.
Mhm.
Once you get into that, what are the things that you definitely look for? Like when you're walking people through different areas, markets, and even the properties.
So, before we again start, I ask my clients what are the ones that they must have in a property, right? And also the wish list that they have. I tell them from the get go that they're not always going to get what they want. We try to compromise, right? Location normally is the number one, and the space. I told them, don't look at the cosmetic stuff, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can always paint the walls, right? But look at the space. Does the location works for you? You have a big family. Does the space works for you, right? Is there a school nearby for your kids, right? Those are the things really that matter, right? And then we can always do a home inspection if the worry is still there. I always recommend doing a home inspection. In a townhouse, not as much. It really depends to them. They can still do it. I'm not stopping them from doing it. But if they're buying a semi or a detached or a freehold home inspection is a must for me.
Okay. Are there any red flags that every time that you see something, you're definitely saying a no to a property? Is there a list of things that you always check?
Yeah. So if you're buying a townhouse, for example, that has maintenance fees, so we try to eliminate, the red flags. There's not really a lot of red flags there, just because mostly the structural, the roof are all covered, or the external ones are covered by the maintenance fee, right? So you're just basically looking at the electrical stuff of things. We want to make sure it's safe, it's up to code, right? I mean, those are not really red flags, but those are a little repair they can be costly, because some of the townhomes are old, and the electrical wires may not be up to code, and you might have a higher premium of insurance if you're trying to call to get that place insured, right? So those are the things. I mean, it's not a break or big deal kind of thing for me. Each client is different. Some clients are okay with that. If they really like the place, they'll be okay with that. Now we're buying a detached home or a freehold. Obviously, if it's a big ticket items, are the roof, the foundational, the structures, right? Plumbing, basement. Like there's a lot of things to really look out for, but the major ones I will say are the roof, the plumbing, and the structural.
I see. Okay, interesting. So basically, with a detached home, the way that you assess a detached home in the townhomes will be slightly different.
Yes.
Simply because the foundations and all the other stuff that would be, I guess, you will weigh in differently for each
Yeah.
type of homes.
Well, you remember, you as a buyer will be paying for that, will be covering that in the future, right? Something happens to the roof. A roof is like they last 25 years, but it is also one of the major costly, like renos,
Right.
right?
That doesn't actually show.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Because you kind of just expect that the roof is not going to leak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, exactly. And I appreciate that a lot of times when we see that, the price point is within the budget, right? People kind of want to go for it, but without knowing that certain big ticket items, right? Like a foundation roof, right? Sometimes it could be HVAC. Those
Yeah,
can easily cost you over 5K in any sort of repair or replacement. But people tend to forget to check on that. They feel like they got so drawn into the cosmetic stuff, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then they go in there to completely neglect, certain roof might
The
actually need
important ones. Yeah,
yeah, and then that could easily be 20K, depending on the size of the property.
exactly.
Yeah. And obviously, once you like, this is also why I like about your approach, right? To really look into the budget, how much financial obligation they have, because the moment that they're unable to pay for those ones, one thing leads to another one, especially with leaks. It can create further damage to the property. Awesome. Okay, so home inspection. Let's quickly talk about this a little bit. So you will place an offer for your buyers. Let's say if they look through multiple different properties. Actually, there's a couple questions that I'm pretty sure a lot of audience will be interested in knowing, especially for their first time buying a home. How many properties do you usually recommend to see and get familiar with the market before you place an offer? And how many offers do people need to kind of expect them to make in order for them to actually get at least like one property that they feel like, okay, this can be good?
You know what? Like honestly, I've had a client who, the intuition is there to buy that home in the first visit, not the first home that we visited, but on the first day that we had a house tour, right? And I have clients who I've worked on for a couple of months to even a year before they bought, right? So each client will be different. Really, to be quite honest, it's just I'm not a pushy realtor. I want to make sure I want to go back to the basic where you are comfortable with what we're looking with what you're buying. I've always believed that money will come if I do the right thing, right? So there's not, my clients differ really. I leave it up to them. The client I'm working on right now, we've been looking for the past 6 Thursdays. Honestly, 6 Thursdays now. I have another one
Six
later
weeks
on
straight.
at 5 o'clock, right? Because they're in the medical field, so we can only do like Thursdays, right, for them. So past 6 Thursdays now. So in fairness, right, like they're interested, but I think they're still iffy. Again, if I was aggressive enough, I believe that I would have easily gone post them a couple of weeks back. If I'm being honest, if I'm a
Right.
pushy, I'm gonna be pushing for them because I know that they really like it. But it's still in the market, right? The one that they like, it's still in the market. So actually, this morning I just told them that, hey, by the way, I know we're looking later on, but this one is still in the market, and I've seen your reactions on this place. Why don't we go visit it today as well? Part of the visit today, and then that way we can compare because I see that this property is your bar right now, right? So we can compare what we're looking at this one to this one that you really like, and maybe hopefully you'll kind of get a feel and on this property that you really like, because sometimes it's really there. It's like you will know if you really want the house, I think.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting about like your own like primary residence? Sometimes the primary residence will come back to you. There's a saying that actually I don't know if it's a common saying, but at least like in Chinese culture, there's a vibe between you and the house, right? And
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
you try to chase a home, you may
yeah,
not even get it, right?
yeah, yeah,
You like it so much, everything's perfect, but you keep pushing, 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 and then friction keeps coming in, and you don't
yeah,
end up getting the property. And then the next one shows up that also fits into your criteria, but it's been on the market for a while. It's just like, it kind of comes back to find you.
yeah,
One other things I want to mention is that finding homes, the second visit and third visit, typically you end up seeing different things in the home,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I think it's always good to kind of do more visits and to come to that yes and no conclusion. At
yeah.
least place an offer where you feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I try to not overflow them with a lot of properties on every visit, honestly, just because it's not helping them for me. I think it's confusing them even more. So
Right.
I try to like maybe 3 to 4 max per visit and then go from there, even though there's a lot of, especially right now, there's a lot of things in the market, right? But I try to picture myself, okay, would I like this place, right? If there's a home, there's a school, they have a kid, will this work for them? Although I will show them, I will email them freehand, but I keep telling them, okay, what are your top 3 or top 4 that you wanted to see today,
Right.
right? So we eliminate, confusions.
So for people who are kind of like unable to make the certain decision, because again, at the end of the day, this is probably the biggest purchase
Yeah.
that they have in their entire life up until this point. How do you walk them through this? I would assume you work with some people who just can't get through that, reach that comfort level. They go through it, they know it's the right decision, but they were just like, now we need to really commit to it. How do you walk people through that kind of emotion stage?
I kind of sometimes I tell them to, sleep on it. Again, talk about it amongst yourselves. What's really important to you, and then because I can only show them as much, and the numbers that if we already look at the numbers and the numbers make sense, it fits their budget financially, they'll be okay. There's really not much I can do. If there's anything I can do, I would offer my service, right? But for me, it goes back to them. What are they comfortable? What are they really looking at? In the home, right? If there's a space works for them, maybe I can break it down even more, right? So what's stopping you from buying this home? Right? If the numbers make sense, the space makes sense, what else is there that we're looking for in this perfect home that you want? Because I try to remind them that there's really not a perfect home. Otherwise, you buy a land and you build it yourself, right?
That's
So
yeah.
we try to compromise what's important.
Mhm.
Right now with your family, with your current living situation, what's really important, right? Especially, I try to tell them we're living coming from an apartment. You don't have this, townhome. You have two homes. You have two bathrooms. Okay, so maybe you don't like those bathroom walls. You don't like the tub, but you've been living in an apartment for 10 years with one bathtub and with one, you know what I mean, with one bathroom.
Yeah.
Now we have a townhome that you like with two bathrooms, two like. I mean,
It's an
I try to
upgrade
break it down.
already. Yeah.
I guess for me, what I'm trying to say, I try to break it down and have them realize, okay, where you are right now, currently for the past 10 years, and what's the opportunity ahead right now, right? We cannot look for a perfect home because there's not such thing, but does this make sense to you? And if it does, then you know what, maybe it's worth putting an offer.
I always find that the buyer in this stage, right, they go through this kind of emotional up and down. So initially they will go, like when they just first started, they get very excited, very happy, and they see homes that are out of their budget, right? So the buying desire was like shooting up so high. And then once they view a few homes, then they started coming down to realize like the reality, right? Okay, well, with this budget, then I can only maybe go for a specific type of homes. And then they go into a bit of a like anxious or depression type of mode. It's like, okay, it's not really as exciting as what I thought. And then you normalize the feeling, and once they normalize the feeling, this is where they can start making offer because the expectation emotion now is under control. Obviously, sometimes the people go out there and look at the first property, the desire went up so high, and then they were just like, okay, Ryan, let's go, let's put
Yeah,
it
yeah.
offer. But it's rarely, and obviously that you still want to kind of educate them with how they make this type of decision. Okay, so I love your process. If I can kind of like break it down for the audience here. So initially, the very first step is to really understand the budget, their financial situation, their credit. This is where you spend a lot of time getting to know the clients rather than just pushing people to start like, looking at the properties and all that, which is awesome because now then you can really educate your clients to make the most informed decision and then and without getting extra like financial burden in their life. Then after that, once you really get a clear understanding, you go into the market analysis with the location, space, schools, and all that stuff. Understand exactly what they're looking for. And then the last one would be like, okay, once you narrow down the specific neighborhood, you help them basically go out there, look for properties, and use that as a baseline to start seeing what's good, what's bad, and then you play with the elimination for those choices until they can actually find that sweet spot for them.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's very clear. If you could give one piece of advice for a buyer, in today's market right now, what would that be? Just because the market is still kind of uncertain, people are still trying to time the market, which is almost impossible to do. What would that advice be to kind of get people who are kind of on the fence about buying a home?
I think for me is waiting to save up to 20% for down payment. Why do that if you're financially ready with 5% down payment? And I'll explain why. If you wait for that 20% to save up for that 20%, realistically, how long will it take you to save that 20% down payment? We're looking at 600,000. That's $120,000. 20% down plus closing costs. You're looking at about 130, 150, probably max, right?
Yeah.
But what if you can just get in a $600,000 home with just $40,000, up to $50,000 probably maximum? Why wait? Right? You're missing out on a lot of things, right? Let's just say you wait. By the time you got your 20%, probably the home prices already went up again. And now you're out of that category just because our wages or salary doesn't really increase as much as well. So now you're being outpriced. And also, not to mention, you're losing out on the possible equities that you have probably gained already just because you did not go with that 5% down payment.
Yeah, for sure. I like about our previous conversation where, when you were breaking down, like the chasing the market and all that stuff, right? Because especially in Toronto, like when the market shifted to a different direction, even at 5% of, let me throw a number in here. Let's say just use $1 million to make the math a little bit easier. 5% of $1 million is 50K. The moment that you're chasing that 50K and you correct it back, saving that 50K is extremely hard.
Yes.
It's very, very hard. Now, people's concern is like, how do I wait until the market is truly at the bottom? But that's also unrealistic to actually expect that because you can wait. By the time you see that it's on the bottom, there's an increasing influx of buyer coming in here,
Already.
and all of a sudden you correct it back. So if you're not in the game, in the searching mode during that time, there's also no way for the buyers to truly catch that small period of time.
Yes.
So the goal here, I like what you say, control your financial situation, make sure that this makes sense, and then they get in with a bit of leverage initially so that you keep more capital, more saving in the bank account. When the market shifted back to the different direction, you're not in the chasing game anymore. You're in the market already, and just let that ride in the future. So Ryan, is there anything else that you feel like they need to kind of be aware of?
I think we pretty much covered a lot of this and most of them, the important ones, especially. I guess for me, just don't wait because there's no perfect time. There's no perfect home. As long as you know what you want, you prioritize your finances, get educated with your own finances. Just to sum it up shortly, in a short version, I guess, is strategically, right? Not emotionally, right?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
be smart buyers.
You know what, guys? Honestly, if you're curious about like getting into the market, right? At least I book a code to Ryan because the most important thing here is to understand your financial situation here, right? You may know how much you can afford, but if you incorporate that with the mortgage payment, with the life insurance, for example, right? And even incorporate with your preference on the homes, this might still change a lot by the time you get to, start viewing the property. So I will highly recommend people just do a quick financial planning analysis with Ryan first before you start looking for a home. And Ryan, you're a big church guy, like, and I know you're always like very given type of person. Even if people don't end up working with you, I think you will still be like very willing to at least like, provide that initial
Yeah,
insight.
of course.
How old is your youngest one?
8 months now.
8 months now. How's your sleep so far?
I don't want to lie. I'm actually blessed because my wife handles all that. I'm blessed with the wife that I have because she's very hands-on when it comes to that. Waking up late at night, so
Yeah.
she lets me sleep, get my sleep unless really needed, and she'll wake me up. But
Yeah.
again, I'm blessed with my wife.
That's awesome. Are your older, like the children, also helping out with your
Oh
youngest one?
yeah, I think that's one of the things that's great about our situation right now because my two eldest ones are 24 and 19, so they're excited. They're also hands-on. They help out not because they have to or we tell them to, but because they're willingly wanted to help and take care of their baby boy.
Yeah, you're very brave. Let's put it this way. After so many years, you guys were still like going through the process and adding another team member. Now, let's talk about how you balance everything because you do mortgage, you do real estate transactions, and there's also insurance planning that you do for other clients. How do you balance this with family plus church? Because you're also a very big church guy. So, like, how do you balance everything out?
I guess it's just really prioritizing what's ahead. There's always family time, right? We always set aside a day for that. We still go to church every Sunday before anything else, right? But really, depending on each client that I have, just like any other job, you kind of prioritize what's needed to be prioritized, kind of thing, and you go from there, right? Family always comes first, no matter what. Don't get me wrong, but the clients always is right behind that, right? And it's just really depending on the current needs or the situation that it entitles to the action that I need to do. It's not as hard as it might think, but it's all about, like you said, balancing and just making sure you provide time for each one.
Like prioritization, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. I want to really also understand this part. Like, how did you get into these three industry? Like, did they like did you plan this out, or did you go into the insurance first and then you're like, okay, maybe I should get mortgage license? Like, how did everything happen?
A lot of realtors, you can Google this. There's like thousands of us realtors in the GTA. I think most of them, the motivation is really to earn more money. In all honesty, and not trying to be clean, that wasn't the motivation for me. 2010, we bought our first home. In 2013, we lost it. We got sued. My wife has to file for bankruptcy. I have to file for proposal. In Canada, that was the time where I've seen TD, taking out my car from the garage, right?
Wow.
There's no, we didn't have any money to pay off our utility bills. We tell my kids, oh, something's wrong with the hydro or something like that, because we don't want them to get involved and to know what's going on really.
Right.
But that was my motivation because I went to use a mortgage guy and a real estate guy because they're professionals. Well, I thought they're professionals, but that wasn't the case. And this is what happened. And for my thought was, okay, if these guys can do this and doing whatever things that they're doing, I can do a much better job and help people out the right way, right? And that's that was my motivation really to get into my first real estate. And then a couple of years later, I did get my mortgage just because I do a first time home buyers seminar, and a lot of these questions regarding mortgage finances comes up, and I don't want to, like, stupid is probably the word, or not knowing anything about the
Mhm.
process of mortgage, right? So I took the course. I parked my license for a while. I wasn't really actively doing it. I normally tell my clients, okay, go to your TD, go to whatever bank that you bank with because you have a relationship with them already. So I don't advertise, oh, I'm a mortgage guy, I do it. It's just really a couple of years back when I really activated my mortgage license, just because, what, let's face it, it's a tough market, right? It's a tough real estate market. I might as well utilize my license, right,
Right.
and make money at the same time. So that's when I joined A12 Mortgage and do that as well.
I
With my
see.
insurance, it's also a bad experience. My
Wow.
mom died. So, okay, my mom was supposed to get this amount and she only got this amount, and like, what happened, right? So again, it triggered me to get the license. I got it, learned it, and you know what, it's for personal knowledge, and if somebody needs help about it, their insurance, I'll help them out, but I'm not really aggressively, I'll insure you or I'll change that insurance policy or whatever.
It's really interesting. You went through something terrible, like personally,
Yeah.
and then once you go through that, you were just like, okay, how do I actually correct that? Or you started reflecting on the situation, and you realize that, probably because I just didn't have enough knowledge. And then
Yeah.
you looked into it, developed a little more skill set, and then you're like, I gotta do better because I got screwed over before, and then you want to serve people in a very different way.
You know what? I just wanted to add, like it is also my fault. I'm not blaming the realtors or the agent or the brokers that I work with because, ignorance is not an excuse, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're aware of what we're signing. I guess my thinking back then was, okay, these guys are professionals. I wasn't thinking that they're going to do whatever they did, right? Just to be on the safe side, like know what you're signing. I guess it's a lesson.
Yeah. But it's really good because right now, as an agent, you know exactly how the pre-approval process works, right? You
Yeah.
understand the budgeting side of things. You understand the life insurance and whether or not they have those type of policies in place
Yeah.
if they haven't already, or if maybe in the future they need to definitely take into consideration. So the financial planning that you're giving is not just the buying a home, and I think
Yeah.
that's what I like about your current approach is that every single one of them is its own business. You combine them together to make sure that you basically become a one-stop shop so that
Yeah.
people don't have to go through too many hoops to kind of understand the situation.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so that's really good. Hey Ryan, I want you to kind of understand your goal. Your goal as a realtor, mortgage broker, insurance, like a financial planner. Like how many clients are you looking to kind of help for the next, like say, 12 months?
The goal is if I can help at least 2 families a month, purchasing their home, get their finances straight, I'll be grateful. And for the year, I'll do a 20 to 24, right? I mean, we should always have a goal in mind just to look forward into something that we need to achieve, as an independent, as a businessman, right? So we always have that goal. So I believe 20 to 24 a year will be a great number for me.
Awesome, awesome. Again, like Ryan, with the way that you're doing business, right? You also are not seeking to or that kind of huge volume. Like some people, they're trying to like do it three, four, five like different families in 1 month, right? And sometimes there's going to be a situation where the quality will start dropping because we
Yes.
don't have that much time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think two a month is a really good start. I think two for a month is a really good number because you get to really concentrate their situation, take them through this entire process on your end, and then understand their situation before they actually find their dream home. So, by the way, thank you so much for like sharing all of this because I guess that being able to recover from the situation that you went through is really challenging, and a lot of people they're pretty shy about sharing that kind of experience, right? But that is a source of motivation on why you're trying to get family in the right place. I really appreciate you sharing that experience.
Well, thank you, Ping, for this opportunity. Like I said, I'm always here. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Hopefully, spread awareness. People just need to ask questions, right? The worst is they say no. People say no, but you know what? If the more that they know about things, the better they're off, right down the road.